Imagine a world with no wheels, no fire to cook food, and no way to write down a story. It's almost impossible to picture modern life without these basics. Yet there was a time when none of them existed, until ancient humans invented them and changed the course of history. Human beings are natural problem solvers. Since the dawn of our species, our ancestors have been inventing tools, techniques, and ideas to make life better. Many of these ancient innovations are so fundamental that we take them for granted today. From taming fire to building with concrete, this documentary explores some of the most famous inventions of ancient humans. Breakthroughs that solve big problems in their time and still shape our world in the present day. We'll travel across thousands of years discovering how early inventions in agriculture, writing, navigation, and more became the foundation of civilization. Imagine early humans huddled in a dark cave, shivering on a cold night. Then someone masters a glowing flame. Controlling fire over 1 million years ago was arguably humanity's first great invention. By learning to make and maintain fire, our ancestors could cook food, making it safer and more nourishing, stay warm, and keep predators away. The problem of darkness and cold was solved with a simple campfire. That discovery didn't just provide comfort, it set humanity on a new path. Fire enabled metalworking and toolmaking, and eventually led to engines and electricity generation. Every time we flip on a light or start a car, we're using the power of that first energy revolution sparked in the ancient past. Long before factories and smartphones, the original technology was a sharp stone. Early humans in the Stone Age began crafting tools and weapons from stone, wood, and bone tens of thousands of years ago. Picture a hunter in prehistoric times shaping a flint rock into an arrowhead. This simple invention solved the problem of survival by making hunting and building easier. From hand axes to bows and arrows, these tools allowed humans to cut, dig, defend themselves, and obtain food more effectively. Over time, the idea of making tools to extend our abilities evolved into all of today's machines and gadgets. Every knife, fork, needle, or engine has its roots in that first leap when ancient people realized they could shape the world around them with tools. No invention may be more iconic than the wheel. Think of a world before the wheel. Moving heavy objects or traveling long distances was painfully slow. Around 3,500 BCE in ancient Mesopotamia, someone hit on a brilliant idea, a round wheel that could turn freely. The earliest wheels were used for making pottery, and soon after for transport, mounted on carts and chariots. This simple invention solved the problem of mobility, allowing people to haul goods and travel with far less effort. The wheel revolutionized trade and daily life. Fast forward to today, and the wheel is everywhere. Not just in cars and bicycles, but in gears, turbines, and any rotating machinery. That first wooden wheel set in motion all modern transportation and mechanical engineering. For most of early human history, people lived as nomadic hunters and gatherers, always chasing the next meal. Now imagine the breakthrough of planting a seed and reaping a harvest. Around 10,000 BCE, in the Fertile Crescent of the Middle East, humans developed agriculture, the practice of farming crops and domesticating animals. This invention solved the huge problem of food insecurity by growing wheat, rice, corn, and more, and by taming goats, sheep, and cattle for food and labor. Our ancestors created a steady food supply. Farming meant people could settle in one place instead of roaming, which led to permanent villages and eventually the rise of cities and civilizations. The agricultural revolution provided food stability for the first time in history, and it still sustains humanity today. Every loaf of bread and every meal on our table traces back to that first decision to sow seeds in the soil. Picture an ancient scribe carving strange symbols into a clay tablet under the desert sun. That image captures one of the most profound inventions in history: writing. The first writing systems emerged around 3,200 BCE in Mesopotamia, cuneiform, and in Egypt, hieroglyphs. Writing was invented to solve a new problem in growing societies: how to record information and communicate across time and distance. Instead of relying on memory or word of mouth, people could now document trade transactions, laws, stories, and knowledge in a physical form. Writing gave human thoughts a lasting voice. Its impact is immeasurable. Writing enabled history and science to accumulate, and it is the direct ancestor of everything from books to emails. In fact, all education and literature today build upon the foundation of those first ancient records. Every time you read or write, you're using an invention so old and powerful that it underpins civilization itself. Once people began farming and living in communities, they needed to keep track of time, seasons, harvests, and holidays. Ancient civilizations from the Maya to the Egyptians observed the sky and created the first calendars to mark the passage of days and years. The Egyptians, for example, developed a 365-day solar calendar to predict the annual Nile floods. In addition to calendars, early devices like sundials and water clocks, clepsydras, were invented by around 1500 BCE to measure hours within a day. These innovations solved the problem of planning ahead. They divided the day and year into measurable units so that everyone could organize farming cycles, religious festivals, and daily work. Our modern obsession with punctuality and schedules can be traced directly to these ancient timekeeping tools. Every clock, wristwatch, and calendar app today is a descendant of humanity's first attempts to understand and segment time. Clothing might seem like a simple fact of life, but there was a time when our ancestors had to endure the elements with only their bare skin. Tens of thousands of years ago, circa 50,000 BCE, humans learned to sew animal skins together using bone needles and thread made from sinew. This humble invention, clothing, solved the critical problem of staying warm and protected in harsh climates. Visualize a prehistoric person patiently stitching furs by a fire. That simple act meant survival through winter nights and ice age cold. Over time, making clothes also became a form of creativity and expression. What began as basic stitched hides evolved into textiles, fabrics, and eventually a worldwide fashion industry. Today, clothing remains one of our basic needs, alongside food and shelter, and has grown into a multi-trillion-dollar global industry. Every jacket, dress, or pair of shoes we wear owes its existence to those first tailoring innovations in the distant past. How do you build a pyramid or navigate by the stars? Ancient humans answered that by inventing mathematics, the universal language of numbers and patterns. The early development of math took place in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, where people created systems of counting, geometry, and simple algebra as early as 3000 to 2000 BCE. Mathematics was invented to solve practical problems, calculating harvest yields, dividing up land, and tracking astronomical events for calendars. For example, Babylonian merchants needed arithmetic to keep trade records, and Egyptian engineers needed geometry to construct temples and pyramids. This new way of thinking, representing quantities with symbols, was revolutionary. It provided a foundation for science, engineering, and commerce, both then and now. In fact, modern finance, technology, and scientific research are all built on the bedrock of ancient mathematics. Anytime you use a computer or even count change, you're benefiting from an invention so old and ingrained that we rarely think of it as an invention at all. For thousands of years after writing was invented, people wrote on whatever they could: clay tablets, stone, animal skins, or papyrus reeds. But around 105 CE in ancient China, a new invention made writing much more accessible: paper. The Chinese official Kai Lun is credited with creating the first true paper by pulping plant fibers and spreading them flat to dry. Paper was cheaper and easier to make than bamboo strips or silk, and more durable than papyrus. This invention solved the problem of portability and abundance in writing materials. Suddenly, important ideas and records could be reproduced and carried everywhere. The spread of literature, education, and bureaucracy in ancient China and beyond was boosted enormously by paper. And even in today's digital age, we still rely on paper for many aspects of daily life, from books and newspapers to packaging and currency. Every sheet of paper we use is a direct descendant of that ancient innovation that revolutionized communication. For travelers in the ancient world, getting lost at sea or in a featureless desert was a constant risk. The invention of the magnetic compass changed the fate of exploration forever. Developed in China between roughly 200 BCE and 200 CE, the first compasses were pieces of lodestone, magnetic iron ore that naturally aligned with Earth's magnetic field. Interestingly, these were initially used as fortune-telling devices, but soon their potential for navigation became clear. The compass solved the age-old problem of finding direction, especially when the sun or stars were hidden. By the 11th century CE, compasses were guiding sailors on open oceans, enabling the great age of discovery. Today we have GPS satellites, but the humble compass is still a vital backup tool for navigation in ships and aircraft. And it's the principle behind how our smartphones know which way is north. Every map, app, and navigation system builds on the ancient insight that a simple magnetized needle can point the way when you're lost. How did ancient Romans build giant temples and aqueducts that still stand after 2,000 years? Their secret was concrete. While rudimentary forms of concrete, mixing mud or lime with aggregates, existed by 1300 BCE in the Middle East, the Romans perfected a superb concrete recipe by around 600 BCE. They mixed lime, volcanic ash, called pozzolana, and water, and even discovered that adding volcanic sand allowed the mixture to set underwater. Concrete solved a major construction problem. It allowed builders to create large, solid structures in almost any shape, far stronger and more fire-resistant than simple bricks or wood. The Romans used it to construct enduring marvels, like the Pantheon's dome and the network of aqueducts, revolutionizing architecture. In the modern world, concrete is literally the foundation of our cities. It's the single most widely used human-made material on Earth. From skyscrapers to highways and dams, we still rely on the same principles the Romans used, mixing stone, sand, and cement to build structures that last. In the ancient world, illness or injury often meant the difference between life and death. But humans are resourceful. Over thousands of years, virtually every early culture developed some form of medicine to heal wounds and treat diseases. Ancient Egyptians, Chinese, Indians, Greeks, and others experimented with herbal remedies and potions, learning which plants could soothe pain or cure infections. Early surgeons even attempted bold procedures. For instance, skull trepanation, drilling a hole in the skull, was practiced in prehistoric times to relieve pressure or treat ailments. These healing practices solved the basic problem of caring for the sick and injured, laying the groundwork for healthcare. Traditional medicine systems like Ayurveda in India and traditional Chinese medicine began in antiquity and are still practiced in some form today. More importantly, the accumulated knowledge of centuries, from herbal lore to anatomical study, paved the way for modern medicine and surgery. Every doctor's prescription and every hospital treatment today has deep roots in the trial and error discoveries of our ancient ancestors who refused to accept sickness as fate. From the moment we harnessed fire to the building of roads and writing of books, ancient inventions created the blueprint for human civilization. These breakthroughs were born from necessity and curiosity, and they propelled humanity forward. It's inspiring to realize that the basic ideas behind our high-tech modern lives, cooking food, telling time, traveling faster, sharing knowledge, staying healthy, were all figured out by people who lived thousands of years ago. The story of these inventions is a reminder that innovation is timeless. Ancient humans might not have had modern science or tools, but they had creativity, ingenuity, and the drive to improve life. In many ways, they laid the foundation so we could build the world we know today.